Hi, this is Michael Carlin, president of Henry & Horn Wealth Management, here with your Manage the Funds podcast. We have to do a how-to understand expenses in mutual funds. We have to because no one seems to know. Recently, I was talking to a client of ours that's a lawyer, and I asked him, we're talking about his retirement plan and the company, and I said, so what do you figure the expenses are inside your retirement plan, like, the mutual funds? He said, what do you mean? Like, the fund expenses. He said, I have no idea. And it doesn't stop surprising me that people don't know. It doesn't matter what your profession is. People just don't know what the mutual fund expenses are. And I don't care if your money's at Vanguard, Fidelity, American Funds, T. Rowe Price, John Hancock. I don't care. A mutual fund has an expense to it. They're not free. And they're not free because Vanguard and Fidelity have huge buildings and employees. They're huge companies. They sponsor things. Where do they get the money from? They get the money from mutual fund expenses. Let's unpack a little bit about what's inside these mutual funds and what's inside these expenses. Because when you're looking at your statement, it's not obvious. When you grab your statement and you flip front and back, you might find some disclosures, but you're not going to find in there, well, here are the fees. The good news is you can go online and find them easy enough, but first you need to start with, what am I looking for? There's a bunch of different costs inside of mutual funds. Let's break them down. 12B1 fees. We'll talk about what they are. Investment management fees, asset wrap fees, sub-TA fees, and shareholder servicing fees. And there's two more extra hidden costs that I'm going to save for the end that you probably didn't even know existed. Let's unpack the expenses one at a time. The first is a management fee. Management fee is what goes to the portfolio manager. So I researched real quick to see what the most expensive manager fee, what it was. There was a fund called Superfund, of course. Superfund Managed Futures Strategy A has one of the highest management fees that I could find. It's 3.28%, according to their prospectus. 3.28%, which means if this fund has a year where it grows 3% and their fees are 3.28%, it means you have a negative rate of return. It means that they have to earn 3.28% for you just to break even. That's a big hill to climb. But you probably should ask, well, wait, but they're charging 3.28%, but maybe it's for a reason, and maybe they're just excellent at what they do, and they should be charging a big fee because I'll be making a lot of money, so I don't care what the fees are. Well, in Superfund's case, this year it performed okay, as when I looked at it as of today, Superfund was up about 7% for the year, but since 2014, when the fund came out, it's performed in the bottom quartile of its peer group 3 times, and once it was in the third quartile, meaning that hasn't been the case. So you need to understand your mutual fund expenses. You need to understand your management fees. An expensive fee does not always mean performance. Also understand that mutual funds can raise and lower their expense ratios from year to year. They're not locked in. They tend to hover around the same amount, but you got to be careful. You got to look at that data. Then there's 2 different types of funds. There's the actively managed funds, like the Superfund, where they're investing in futures and trying to get you in the right place and the right investments at the right time. And then there are passive funds. Think of Vanguard as an example. Those funds that are not active, that just passively own a variety of different investments that are stagnant, tend to charge a lot less. There are a bunch of Vanguard funds that charge 5 basis points, 4 basis points, or 0.04%. It's not free. It's still a number. You got to know your expenses. Again, let's go to 12B1 fees. So we got through management fees. Let's get to 12B1 fees. Now, the 12B1 fees is typically the fee that's used to reward an intermediary for promoting a fund. In other words, it's a lot like a commission, meaning if an advisor puts you into a mutual fund that has a 12B1 fee, in lots of cases, and in most cases, I should say, that advisor will be paid the 12B1 fee. It does feel like a commission. So if you were ever wondering how your advisor charges you when you're just holding these mutual funds. If your mutual fund has a 12B1 fee, you might have just answered your question. That may be how they're getting paid. If you have a fee-only investment advisor, they're not receiving your 12B1 fees. Okay, so you need those. A fee-based advisor is not keeping it, but a commission-based advisor or a broker is. You need to know the difference between that too. 12B1 fees aren't necessarily the most expensive part of the equation, but typically they average somewhere around that 13 basis points or 13/100%. So if you have $10,000 in a mutual fund, that's about $13 a year. We just want you to know what it is, where it goes, and what to look for. Some mutual funds have a redemption fee, and that may surprise some people. It can come in the form of you buy a fund and that you won't pay a fee unless you sell it within the first 90 days. Wow, how did that come out? Or in the first year. There's all different kinds of fund type redemption fees that exist. You need to know before you buy it, if it's recommended to you or you buy it on your own, is there a redemption fee? And if there is, what is it? Don't get yourself into a mutual fund without knowing that information first, because you may buy it and then decide you want to sell it over some period of time, and you don't want to be paying a 1 or 2% fee to get out. By the way, the SEC mandates that you can't have a redemption fee greater than 2%. This fee does not go to the broker. This actually goes back to the mutual fund. Then you have different fees that hopefully you don't see a whole lot of anymore. But this used to be the only way mutual funds were sold. When I first started in the business, mutual funds, there were no options. It was just you bought a mutual fund and you paid an upfront charge, an upfront sales load. And the upfront load when I first started was 8.75%. Right. So for every $10,000 you put in, $875 came right off the top and paid the broker. That's the way it used to be. Now there's a whole bunch of different other kind of upfront, back end, and level load situations where it's A, B, and C share class. There's a lot of different share classes with mutual funds. For the purposes of this how-to, understand if you're buying an A share in a commission-based environment, you're going to pay an upfront fee. Could be as high as 5.75%. If you're going to buy a B share, it's a back-end fee. It's a fee that will decline over time, but you have to keep the mutual fund likely for years before you can liquidate the fund without a fee. A C share is a level load fund. It charges you a 1% fee per year every year for however long you hold the fund. You got to understand this before you buy a fund. You got to ask if you're going to be buying a fund like this, ask your advisor if you're paying a load. There are a lot of different ways to do this. The advice that we typically give clients is we don't want you paying sales loads. We want you to be buying these free of charge to get in, no charge to get out. There's too many different options these days that the old way of doing business is something we tend to recommend clients steer away from. Let's get to some hidden fees. There are two. Ready? The number one hidden fee is transaction fees. Like what? So, University of California Davis professor Roger Edelin and his co-researchers from the University of Virginia, they analyzed portfolio holdings and transaction data for about 1,700 funds from 1995 through 2006. What they found is that the cost that mutual funds paid to buy and sell the stocks in their portfolio could be as high or higher than the expense ratio of the fund. That's the first thing. That's, again, the part of that management fee. What they found is that fees can vary by asset class. For example, investors in a small cap fund, they can pay an average of 3% or more in transaction costs. And large cap value funds could pay 0.84%. or 84 basis points per year. It's a hidden cost. Now that you won't see in the prospectus. That information you won't find anywhere. Other than here, of course. So understand that there's a hidden fee for the cost to buy and sell stocks in the portfolio. So one of the things you're going to look at is the portfolio turnover. How often are the stocks being rotated in my portfolio? If there's a lot of rotation, then you're going to know there's a lot of transaction costs. Hidden fee number 2, taxes. Mutual funds can be inefficient when it comes to taxes. And what you have to know is that there's a whole bunch of holdings inside your mutual fund, a whole bunch of different stocks. And when you buy that mutual fund, you inherit the original cost that mutual fund purchased the shares at. And if you're looking at a mutual fund that has good performance, then they probably bought good stocks and they probably did it a long time ago. And there's probably, in some cases, a bunch of gains in the portfolio, and you're inheriting that mutual fund's cost with which they acquired the stock. There are environments where your mutual fund that you bought could lose money and yet distribute a taxable gain to you because of the transaction activity inside the fund. Because they may have owned stocks, bought them a long time ago, sold them at a gain, even though the fund lost money, and distributed the shareholders a gain. Great unknown fee. Number 2 is the tax and the tax nature of mutual funds. You got to be careful. They're not as straightforward as many people believe. So now you know what the expenses are inside of mutual funds. You know they're not free. You know that you won't find it on a statement. You know that you can go online, put the ticker symbol in, put the name of that fund, go to Morningstar, your favorite website to find these kind of things, and you'll be able to locate exactly what the expense ratio is. A good, knowledgeable investor is a better investor. So with that wraps up your Henry and Horn Managed Funds podcast. I'm Michael Carlin. Thanks so much. Take care and have a great day. Material on this program is intended for general information only and should not be taken as specific investment, tax, or legal advice. None of the information contained in this broadcast is intended by the host to be a solicitation for sale of any security. Further information is available by contacting Henry and Horn Wealth Management. Securities offered through Independent Financial Group, member of FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Wealth Management LLC, DBA Henry and Horn Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor. Henry and Horn Wealth Management and IFG are separate and unrelated entities. Henry and Horn Wealth Management are separate entities, member of FINRA and SIPC.